CP3 and the Suns are moving on. What does the future hold for Kawhi and the Clippers now? A collective sigh of relief in Milwaukee. Giannis's injury, not as bad as they thought, but do they need to rush him back to win Game 5 tonight? And what in the world are you doing, Patrick Beverley? Boom!
Being Patrick Beverley.
Get your boy, Nick.
Thursday morning, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. Nick, Brandon, Kevin Wildes. Nick, how far out of line was your guy, Patrick Beverley?
No, he's right in line. That's who he is. That's why the broadcast did a 10-minute tribute to him right before he punched Ayton in the face and shoved Chris Paul. That's Kevin Wildes doing. Kevin Wildes texting his
in hindsight.
Need more Patrick Beverley love.
In hindsight, retrospect. One way to start, one place to start. Christopher Emmanuel Paul, CP3, finally getting his day in the CP3. Phoenix Sun. Suns, Clippers, Game 6, and a masterful 41-point night for Chris Paul. 31 points in the second half alone. And here's the key, 0 turnovers as the Suns advance to their first final since 1993, beating the Clippers, sending them home. And after 16 seasons and 5 teams, Chris Paul finally headed to his first career finals. Here's the star of the night after the big win.
Since day one, they opened me, they welcomed me with open arms. Coach, we did this 10 years ago in New Orleans, and we still got a lot of work to do, but we're gonna enjoy this. And my family up top, I love y'all. Y'all see them right there? That's my game, straight up. 16 years of this, 16 years, surgeries, hard work, losses, bad losses, but we're gonna enjoy tonight.
Chris Paul is stamped regardless. Anything else from here is extra. It's extra just to solidify. And, I know he wants it bad. I know he's happy about this for his first time, but, I know what he's on the pursuit of. And, we have that same understanding. We don't talk about it much, but we know what we're trying to get to. But as far as he needs a ring to be considered, he's one of the best point guards ever played the game. And that's a fact.
All right, Nick, let's start with you here. What does making the NBA Finals mean for Chris Paul?
Well, Devin Booker touched on it. He is one of the greatest players of all time, regardless. But this is massive. Because the best players to never make the finals, now that Chris Paul is off the list, it's great players. Melo's on there. George Gervin is on there. Steve Nash is on there. Dominique Wilkins is on there. Those are probably the 4 best to never make the finals. Chris Paul's better than all of them and should not have been on that list. Now, there's a lot of all-time greats who have never won a championship that are right in line with Chris Paul. He might move himself off of that list here in a couple of weeks. But for him not only to make the finals, but do it the way he did it, for me, as a Chris Paul fan, was just perfect. Because you're going to hear today, that's the most points in a half Chris Paul has ever scored in a basketball game. The 31 in the second half to put his team in the NBA Finals. And that's almost true. The only time he's actually scored more points in a half was in high school when he said before the game, I'm going to score 61 for his grandfather, who had just tragically been killed at the age of 61, and did exactly that. And the reason I bring that up is that happened 19 years ago. This game happened last night. And he has always had these scoring explosions accessible to him. He rarely has gone to them because it has not been typically the best way for his team to win. And that, Brandon, is the definition of a point guard. Not the guy who can score the most points, not the guy who can put up the biggest numbers, but the guy who can understand what does my team need to win tonight. Oh, my big man, we're going to need him on defense. I better get him some touches. Oh, Jay Crowder, we're going to need him to hit some threes. Let me get him rolling. Whatever your team needs is what you do. That's what a point guard is. That's what Magic was. That's what Isaiah was. That's what Chris Paul is. And seeing him do it last night and put his team on his back to blow out the Clippers was spectacular. And I couldn't be happier for him. And it does stamp him, as Devin Booker said.
Right. Listen, and it's hard for me to follow up with what you just said. I got goosebumps listening to you talk about his grandfather. I think I saw that story years ago. Someone was doing a feature piece on him, and that was touching. But to hear you talk about it and go back and say 19 years ago, he said he was going to do this. And this game happened last night, a game where he had to be aggressive if he wanted to eliminate these boys. So, you know, for me, it's about the moment. Right now, CP3, all he's doing is changing the narrative, right? We're going to hear more stories like the one we just heard from Nick Wright. That's what's going to happen. That's the amazing thing about basketball. My father used to always tell me, he said, son, it just takes one play. It could take one moment, and it totally changes everything. 4 years in college, 3 years, nobody knew who I was. Nobody would throw me the ball. And then there was one play that turned into one season, that turned to a 13-year NFL career. So now you see CP3, someone who we know is a great, but you're talking about 16 years, ups and downs, you know, triumph and falls in the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, boom, he has this breakthrough. And now this is what we're talking about. This is the narrative of a CP3, because there isn't one player that sets out and says, you know what, I'm going to make it to the NBA and my only goal is to make it to the finals. No, they want to win. That's what these guys want, especially greats like that. You know, maybe some players that's like, you know what, I'm just happy just to be here. I'm just happy just to get a jersey. CP3, the LeBron James of the world, no, these guys are talking about winning titles and multiple times. I guarantee you CP3's thinking like, all right, finally. But I set out to have 2 or 3 of these bad boys. So I just absolutely love you know, sharing this moment on television with CP3, being able to talk about it, because these are the moments we want, Wiles. We want to talk about the good stories, and CP3 did it, and also his boys alongside of him.
Yeah, when you talk about sort of the joy of the moment, I want to show you a video, and it might seem like a silly thing, it may seem like an anecdotal thing. I think it tells the story of Chris Paul's career, and it's a video of him hugging Lil Wayne. And then he goes over and he also hugs Billy Crystal. So here's Lil Wayne, obviously. He's got a new haircut. And then he goes over and he hugs Billy Crystal and his wife. And I saw this, Nick, and I said, this is a beautiful moment. There's a joy in him making it to the finals. And these guys have been there with him the whole time, right? And I think everybody, no matter where you are in this country, no matter who you are, you can find a bit of yourself in Chris Paul. So if you're from the Carolinas, Chris Paul's from the Carolinas. He wore a Winston-Salem hat after the game. He went to Wake Forest. If you're from if you're from New Orleans, like Lil Wayne, he sort of like was your first major superstar, helped put you guys on the map. And then if you're from LA, Lob City, and I thought it was horrible that the Clippers fans were booing. I thought it was pathetic. You should have stood up and give that guy a standing ovation for what he did. You wouldn't have Kawhi, you wouldn't have Paul George. You were the Sacramento Kings before Lob City showed up. And including Lakers fans. Lakers fans, find a reason to root for Chris Paul, because that rivalry, although it's like not a real rivalry, it does make basketball more interesting. If you're from Houston, he's put some time in there. If you're from Oklahoma City, thought you guys were tanking? Nope, you were making it to the playoffs. And obviously, if you're from Phoenix, if you're tall, you can be like, you know what? Chris Paul's actually tall. If you're short, he's short. If you're a nice guy, Chris Paul's a nice guy. If he's a mean guy, Chris Paul can be a little bit mean. No matter who you are, Brandon, you can find a reason to root for Chris Paul.
It's great.
That's great. Wow.
Well, something came up as you was going through that. Let me ask you a question. What's his legacy with the Phoenix Suns? He's only been there 10 months? I mean, does this guy get a statue now? Like, what's his legacy in Phoenix?
He gets his jersey retired.
If he wins,
he gets his jersey retired for
his
sure.
number. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he gets his jersey retired. Rex Chapman tweeted last night, because Rex Chapman wore number 3. He goes, my jersey's finally going to hang in the Suns rafters, except it's going to have Chris Paul's name on it now.
That's great.
And he's right. Like, that is what's going to happen. And the other part that is so satisfying is, so the 2 oldest great players in the league right now are LeBron and Chris Paul. They're both 36. And LeBron lays into this washed king, no one believed in me type of thing, and I play into it sometimes too. But it's obvious nonsense. Like, no one ever thought LeBron was washed. Guys, people did think it was over for Chris Paul. Tillman Fertitta said, this is the worst contract I have ever seen in sports or business. And they attached 4 first-round picks to get rid of him. Then Oklahoma City traded him when he was like, oh, he had a good year. All they got back was Kelly Oubre. There's one other player I'm forgetting. I apologize. Kelly Oubre, a first-round pick, and Rubio. Rubio's the other guy. So like Chris Paul, Wild said 10 months ago. 10 months ago and 22 months ago was considered okay. Like, yeah, he'll help you, but, you know, his time has passed. And now he is the overwhelming favorite to be finals MVP, the overwhelming favorite to be a champion, and had 35-plus points to knock out and sweep the MVP in Jokic, and had one of the finest games of his life last night to make the finals. It's perfect. It makes me so happy, Jenna.
All right, well, that was clearly the feel-good part of last night's game. The feel-bad about last night's game, Patrick Beverley ejected for shoving CP3. It was ugly. It was dirty. We will discuss next. First things first. Ugly moment in the Suns-Clippers game last night, fourth quarter. Clippers down big. Patrick Beverley ejected for that, shoving Chris Paul after a timeout. Yeah, it was dirty. I didn't like to see that. Brandon, Beverley shoving CP3 was blank. Said something there.
Bully. That's exactly what this is. Look, a lot of people knock Patrick Beverley for being who he is, but the reality is it's made him millions of dollars and it helped him get to the NBA. Without this mindset, without this approach, he wouldn't have been here. He wouldn't have been able to tap into his childhood dream. Now, on the other side of that is when you're a bully and you're in that playground or you're hooping or you're in the park, you're eventually going to get punched in the mouth. So I'm predicting that next season, there's going to be someone punch Patrick Beverley in the mouth. Now, Pat, if you're listening, probably not. I'm not sure where you're at. Maybe on the PJ coming down to South Florida or something. Look, I'm with you, buddy. You made it to the NBA, but you know what comes with this territory. What comes with this is somebody is going to go upside your head, and you just have to be ready. Yeah. And when that happens, the whole world's going to see, is this an act or is this dude a real tough guy? So it's a bully.
Okay, so I do think he's a real tough guy. And in general, Brandon, I support Patrick Beverley. I feel like he plays right up to the line, maybe even goes over the line a little bit. But that's what makes him an interesting player. That's what makes him a dynamic player. And guess who else does it? Chris Paul. So there is a little bit of like camaraderie of like guys who are right there on the line. But this is indefensible. There is no reason for this. And when you talk about like, yeah, there's going to be retaliation, well, I don't think there will be for the beginning of next season because I think he's going to be suspended. Nick, I tweeted out yesterday, this reminded me of the Andrew Bynum, JJ Barea play. Lakers were getting blown out by the Mavs, and Andrew Bynum hit JJ Barea. It's just a weak play out of frustration, end up hurting a guy. He gets suspended for 5 games. I think it's going to happen to Patrick Beverley. As much as I like Patrick Beverley and as much as I like his intensity, there's no reason for it. It's impossible to defend.
What's up, Brandon? I'll wait. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yes, I'm sorry, but here's the thing. It's like there's a fraternity, and in that fraternity, like you play hard. You know, look, you're trying to take something off my plate. But at the end of the day, don't go too far. You could potentially hurt this dude, arm or shoulder or wrist. Hell, he's getting an MRI today because of stuff like this. And so this is when it crosses the line, Wilds, where you could potentially end a guy's career when you do things like this or the Bynum play. So this is going against the rules,
That's
man.
right.
Sorry.
That is totally correct.
It's a good
everything
point.
Wild said is correct. And but it's also totally expected. This is who Patrick Beverley has always been. He is the dirtiest player in the league. And he has been fortunate enough in his career to play on teams, for the most part, for most of it, with some all-time great players, whether it be James Harden or Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, so he can just be that little barking chihuahua that's got a big pit bull behind him and thinks he's tough. But I want Wildes back on the screen because I blame Wildes personally for this Patrick Beverley movement that continued yesterday on the broadcast.
Get him.
Last week, Wildes was like, oh, Beverley, you gotta love how he plays. You gotta love him. He's doing this. You're doing a whole little soliloquy, and then your old colleagues last night were like, let's build on the Kevin Wildes narrative. Wildes understates his impact on NBA media. We had Barkley responding to him directly 2 days ago, and now yesterday, we had the broadcast be like, Kevin Wildes says we need more Patrick Beverley content. So let's tell the story about how he got kicked out of school for turning in a fraudulent paper, then had to go to Ukraine and then Minsk and then wherever. And what an amazing arc he's had. Meanwhile, he's plotting how to injure guys. So Wildes, how do you defend this? Because I blame you.
I don't think he did it. I don't think Patrick Beverley did it. If you're going to attack me like this, I don't think Patrick Beverley did it.
Where's the proof?
I don't think he did it.
There's video. Right.
I didn't see it.
We are not a visual medium.
Nowadays.
Wild's weird and wonderful. It confuses me too. What a night for Trey Turner. Trey Turner turned 28 yesterday. How did he celebrate? With his record-tying third career cycle. I just went out for drinks when I turned 28. Amazing night for Trey. Did make your list, Wildes. What else you got for us?
Hey, it's a great day in baseball. Everyone knows what it is. It's Bobby Bonilla Day. Due to the weirdest contract in all of professional sports, today is the day that Bobby Bonilla gets $1.19 million direct deposit into his Bank America account. He looks up and says, oh, today's the day, honey. Looks like we're going out to dinner. He gets this amount of money till 2025. So congratulations, Bobby Bonilla. It's always a great day around the Bonilla household. That's the weird and wonderful from the National
Bobby Bonilla Day.
Throwback.
All right, let's get back to the Clippers from last night. The offseason officially upon them after getting bounced last night. Paul George knows how it all could have been avoided. First things first, on a Thursday morning. I see you, Patrick Beverley. Back here, talking Clippers Suns. And for the Clippers, it's been one heck of a ride. Came back from down 0-2 to the Mavs. Came back from down 0-2 to the Jazz. Almost came back from down 0-2 to Phoenix last night. Didn't quite make it. Paul George, who had to carry the team once Kawhi went down, was asked what could have been if the Claw didn't get hurt. Take a listen.
Oh, we would be going on. This series would have been a lot different. Talk about one of the best players in the league being out. Yet we were, inches, away from getting to the next round. So definitely, it's a what if on this. Factor matters. We didn't do enough. We didn't do enough to win, and it's the reason we're going home.
Antoine Walker joining us now. Twan, good morning. Is Paul George right that the Clippers would have made the finals if Kawhi didn't get hurt?
This is the problem, man. This is the thing that what people have with Paul George, and everybody has, a question or a question mark behind his name. It's because of comments like this. Instead of saying and complimenting his teammates on the run that they made over the last 7-8 games, they obviously put together a great series against Phoenix, but also to come back. They came back from 0-2 in the first two rounds, and Kawhi Leonard was a part of that. So it's no guarantee that you was going to beat the Phoenix Suns. And the Phoenix Suns played the first two games without Chris Paul. So it's no excuse for you to lose this series. And that's why everybody looks at Paul George as not necessarily a superstar. He is always an all-star. but he's not a superstar because you feel like you're making an excuse when he could have got it done. You think about game 2, he misses 2 free throws. He makes those 2 free throws, we may be looking at a different series. Obviously, in game 5, he played terrific, and we want to commend him for that, give him his flowers for it. But it was multiple times in the series where the series could have went the other way without Kawhi Leonard.
That's right.
Of course, it probably could have went differently with a Kawhi Leonard. That's obvious when you talk about a top 5 guy. And Kawhi was playing great basketball in the playoffs. But injuries are a part of the game. I think it's some injuries that we look at that you'd be like, wow, and you can kind of blame the players for. Sometimes the hamstrings and those type of things, we kind of blame it on guys not being in shape. But those are legitimate injuries that happen throughout the playoffs where a guy could mess his knee up and those things not go away. But this is the reason why people question Paul George is because he doesn't stand up and make himself seem accountable for these type of moments like this. They were good enough to win this series without Kawhi Leonard. Now, whether or not they can win the finals, that's another thing, but they could have won the series without him. So I don't necessarily agree with him. Having Kawhi would have got the series done because they started off series, 0-2 with Kawhi in the lineup. So it remains to be seen. So I think at that point you got to give the Suns their flowers and understand that, you beat a team that was better than you, and they got it done.
Right. I mean, to Antoine's point, they were down 0-2 in the first round with Kawhi, down 0-2 in the second round with Kawhi, and in the third round without Kawhi, they were down 0-2, even though Phoenix didn't have Chris Paul. Now, are the Clippers a better team with Kawhi Leonard? Obviously. Could that have changed this series? Obviously. But rinse, repeat that commentary for nearly any team in the playoffs so far this year. There are a lot of what-ifs surrounding injuries in these playoffs, and Antoine nailed it, which is, I'm not here to bang on Paul George because he was great in Game 5, and he has carried this team post-Kawhi's injury. But he wasn't very good in the game last night, and he wasn't very good after the game last night. And the fact of the matter is, even without Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers had every opportunity to win Game 2, and Paul George missed those free throws. And I know we look at the valley-oop as a great play by Phoenix. It's also a massive defensive gaffe by the Clippers. You got less than a second left.
Oh, here we
you
go.
put Boogie Cousins in the game. Boogie Cousins is shading the wrong side. He's just giving it. He's only there to prevent the lob, and he's angled the wrong way. And then in Game 4, you had 12 field goal attempts in the fourth quarter to tie or take the lead, and you went 0 for 12. You lost to a team that scored 84 points in the whole game. No team all year, regular season or postseason, lost a game where their opponent scored 84 or fewer except for that game. So you had plenty of opportunities. But Wilds, I actually think the Clippers should look to, if they're trying to say, what happened, and they should feel mostly good about how this playoff run went compared to last year. We looked at these 0-2 deficits as like a badge of honor because they overcame them, but there is a cost to everything. And because you were down 0-2 to the Mavs, Kawhi only has so many bullets in the chamber because he does have something wrong with his lower body physically. He used a lot of them in that epic Game 6 against Luka and a few more in Game 7. And then in that series, I mean, Kawhi's playing 40-plus minutes in 6 of the 7 games. That's not what he does. It's certainly not what he does in round 1. So it's not shocking that the injury bug bit him in round 2 when his history is he has to be really well managed. So, yes, they would have been better with Kawhi, but they also might have had Kawhi if they had played better earlier when he was still there, if that makes sense. And they could have won the series, to Antoine's point, if Paul George makes a few more plays in Games 2 and 4.
Look, that's totally fair. And you were early on this where you were like, I think the Clippers are physically spent. If we can show how many minutes Paul George played, like this guy played more minutes than anybody else in the playoffs. And we saw it last night. We're like, he's not necessarily playing bad, but he doesn't have that next gear. It just looks like he's out of gas. Antoine, I'm going to push back on you a little bit because of this. Earlier in this series, people started to say Ty Lue was like Bill Belichick. Like, what a strategist. Here's what I think Ty Lue needs to do if he's like Bill Belichick. He should sit Paul George down and show him some Bill Belichick press conferences and say, hey, you know what, Paul? You don't have to say anything. You can just grunt and just be like, I don't know, yep, we're on to next year. I'm on to training. Because Paul George gets penalized, I think unfairly, for just telling the truth or just giving a little bit too much, for being almost too friendly to the media. And what does he get back in return? Criticism. So he's saying what everybody thinks. I think it's actually a sign of a good teammate. It's like, yeah, Kawhi's awesome. I think we would have destroyed them if we had Kawhi, but we didn't. So I think it's just a little bit unfair, and maybe you have a different perspective, that like because Paul George is up there telling the truth and not giving us the pablum, non-answer that so many guys do, we kill him for it.
No, I think you got to look at, Kev, you got to look at this is the reason with the Clippers. They don't have a leader. And obviously we know Kawhi Leonard is not a terrific leader. And then now you go to Paul George, who's not a leader. And that's what this team is missing to probably getting them over the hump. We know they have just as much talent as any team in the league. They got guys that probably we didn't think it was going to be great this year, turned out to be great in big moments. When you think about Reggie Jackson, you think about Terrence Mann. Even if you think about Patrick Beverly, those guys play terrific playoff time. And you need that when you come to the playoffs when you're trying to make a deep run, different guys to step up. And they had them with those moments and those pieces together. You cannot take away from the injury. I'm not going to do that. Kawhi Leonard, obviously, they're a better team, but it's the reason why they're in the position that they're in. They don't have a leader. And to lose a leader, he did the right things throughout the playoffs. He made the adjustments. He played small ball when he had to against Denver, put Jokic in a ton of pick and rolls, and they was able to exploit that without Jamal Murray. And then in the Phoenix series, he went back to a center. He went back to Zubac, and maybe Zubac getting hurt, maybe more important than Kawhi getting out, because now you had a legitimate big who was having a career playoff moment. So you had all those type of things happen. But, Brandon, you can speak to this, and you know that. They just didn't have that leader, a real leader in the locker room that they can really rally behind, and that's on and off the court.
Right. Yeah, it's a trickle-down effect, 100%. You talking about the leader. Starts with the coach. He sets the tempo, and then you need the guys in the locker room that's going to cascade down whatever the coach is saying. Like, here's the objective for the week or for this game, and you need one or two guys in that locker room that's going to echo that day after day after day. And then what typically happens is the guys start taking it to a whole nother level. You see these sub-cultures begin to come to life in the locker room. But staying on this leader thing, Twan, and you understand this. You have to work on your skill on the court, but then you also have to work on your skill in front of the media. And this is where Paul George went wrong. But we've all been in this situation before where we didn't just say the right thing. Because what you want the media talking about you in a good way. That's the goal. But it's damn near impossible, right? Because you're going to have bad moments on the court. You're going to have bad moments in front of the camera. So Paul George, what he should have said was this. When they asked him, well, if you had Kawhi Leonard, would you guys have advanced and gone to the finals? He should have said, look, it was a great series. Great job to CP3 and those boys over there. It's been 10 years since they've been in the playoffs. They haven't been in the finals since 1993. So great job to them. My boys in that locker room fought hard. Kawhi Leonard, obviously we'd have been in a better position if we had Kawhi, but we can't make excuses. We got to now try to figure out how we regroup in this offseason, get healthy, and get back to it. That's what he should have said. And that is the problem and the challenge for most guys. I failed in the past. At times, and I've been criticized and I've been crushed for it, rightfully so. And Paul George, he's going to get criticized and he's going to be held accountable today, rightfully so.
And before I get to Paul George, real quick, while Brandon was talking, Brandon, leave Brandon on the screen if we could. Brandon, you know what I heard? I heard cash registers ringing. You know why? I feel like House of Athlete is about to expand into media training. I feel like there's about to be a little wing. Come get ready for the combine and a nice little 3-hour seminar.
We're going to have
Brandon
Gina
Marshall
teach the course.
telling you how to exactly, Gina and Brandon, the great Gina, tell you how to deal with the media. So these comments yesterday, and again, I'm not trying to just pile on Paul because the best game of his life was Game 5, and I don't want to be too reactionary.
Right.
The comments he made last year that he really got killed for, when he was like, no, it wasn't a must win. This year is why every year is a must win when you're this type of team. Because last year you were healthy. Last year you were up 3-1. Last year LeBron and AD didn't have multiple seasons together. Last year, coming out of the East was the underdog Heat. Last year, you were like, oh, no, it's okay. We're going to build on it. Well, maybe. But last year, Kawhi and Paul George were healthy, and the opportunity was blown. This year, the team was coached better, seemingly better constructed. Paul George was in a better mental space, and you got unlucky with injury. So every year, we've got to get there because nothing is guaranteed. This year is a great example of that, Jenna.
Once again, not the Clippers' year. Phoenix moving on to the finals. With that, we welcome back Nick for the NBA Finals. Welcome back, Nick. One way to guarantee you don't get any love from Nick is to shove the point guard. That's not good. So Patrick Beverley, you did not make the podium last night. Who did, Nick?
Well, Patrick Beverley didn't make the podium, and in fact, retroactively, I'm revoking any and all medals Patrick Beverley received all year. Luckily for him, that was already 0 because he's not a good player. Bronze medal, Devin Booker. Now, Devin Booker did not have a great statistical night, but Devin Booker got his nose re-broken in this game and stayed in the game. I cannot imagine what that felt like. Now you might say, Nick, your nose has never been broken. No, if it had been broken, it wouldn't look like this. If someone does break it, it'll look better. But Devin Booker stayed in the game, gets a bronze medal for toughness. Silver medal, DeAndre Ayton. My guy missed his first shot and then was like, oh no, if I miss one more shot, my 70% field goal percentage is going to go down. Can't allow that. DeAndre Ayton, another wildly efficient game, 8 of 10 from the field, 16 and 17. And then, of course, and look at Chris Paul just screaming at him, probably bad breath too. Then the gold medal, the point guard, bad breath notwithstanding, 41 and 8, 31 in the second half. Some all-time, just everything. It was a Chris Paul tour de force performance. You had a great flop. You had a mind-melting Beverley to create him getting kicked out. You had clutch threes. Chris Paul, by the way, the guy known for telling referees other guys' jerseys are untucked, scored a lot of those points with his own jersey untucked. Look up Chris Paul highlights. You'll never see that. That's a fact. So there it is, Chris Paul. Great performance, gold medal, all Suns medal stand, Jim.
So what's wrong with
That's
you?
That's true. The jersey untucked.
I can't unhear the bad breath thing now. And that's where the problem lies for me. All right, Wilds, you just missed the cut.
Party continues. Well, if you watch the Patrick Beverley pushing Chris Paul play, you'll see Frank Kaminsky offer the weakest defense of all time. You know why he did that? Not because he's a weak guy. He's 7 feet tall. I'm sure he could do some damage, push some people around. But mentally, he was already opening the beers, Wisconsin Badger style, and here he is. So great job, Frank the Tank. Did a terrible job protecting Chris Paul, but you did crack open some brewskis.
The Tank. All right, let's stick with the Suns. And CP3 did last night catapult Chris Paul in the all-time player ranks. We break that down for you next. First things first.
I am over Milwaukee this morning. Your thoughts?
I'm shell-shocked. It's very interesting. I spent some time this past weekend with the great Joy Taylor here in New York City. And listen, I'm going to reveal some confidences. Joy, also not as big of a Giannis fan as the rest of the world is. And I said to her, I was like, Joy, that's a corner. You could be like the first, you'd have to really go far with it, but you could be loudly anti-Giannis. No one's on that corner. This could be the anti-Giannis show. It's an odd day for you to debut this take, Colin, as he's writhing on the ground, holding his knee.
That's true.
Listen, I feel very differently. And I heard the open of your show when Colin's like, oh, I was listening to all these terrible talk shows this morning feeling bad about Giannis. I was like, oh, he's talking about me. I know when he drives in, he's literally talking about my take this morning. He was.
Good stuff, Nick.
Shade.
Colin, Joy. Tonight's game, by the way, featured on the free-to-play Fox Bet Super 6 app. Scan the barcode, the QR code below. Download the app. Answer 6 questions for your shot to win $1,000. I was looking for the code. Here's the code. All this fancy technology. Back here with Chris Broussard talking the Don't Laugh fallout for the Clippers. Losing in the conference finals was bad, but things could get much worse because Kawhi Leonard, who they dearly missed this series, has a $36 million player option for next season. And if we know anything about Kawhi, it's that we know nothing about Kawhi. Like what he wants and where he may want to play. Paul George was asked about the future of the team and who may or may not be back. Take a listen.
One of the commitment I made of signing my contract was to show I'm here for the long run, and I'm committed to this team. Hopefully that weighs on anybody's decision, but it's no hard feelings. These guys, they got decisions to make on their own. I'm gonna definitely try to. I haven't talked to anyone of them, but hopefully this is where they want to continue to play and grow and be something and do something special in the long run. I'm definitely try my hardest to recruit. That's all I can do.
Well, it certainly doesn't sound like Paul George is 100% convinced Kawhi is coming back. Broussard, what does the future hold for your Clippers? Your Clippers, Broussard.
Look, if you want to call them my Clippers, I'm proud of them, Jenna. This was a great playoff. Yeah. All right, without their best player, to beat Utah, to push the Phoenix Suns, second best record in the West in this series. Great job. They have nothing to hang their heads about other than Patrick Beverley with that shove. But outside of that, they did a great job. I have not talked to Kawhi. I've not talked to Uncle Dennis. Dennis is around here in New Jersey. I see him a lot here, but I haven't talked to him about this. But I would be shocked. I don't know why everybody's talking about Kawhi Leonard leaving. Why? I mean, why?
Right.
Does he just have wanderlust to the nth degree? I mean, what in the world? Like, you're at home in Southern California where you wanted to be. You've got your own team. Your team is a championship contender. Next year, they're going to be one of the heavy favorites to get to the finals. You've got an owner who will spend money, whatever it takes to build up the franchise and try to win the championship. You've got a great coach who you respect and get along with. I know the reports about, does he have any issues with the medical staff? I don't know if he does or not. But even if he does, that can be settled with one conversation with Steve Ballmer. He's not trying to let Kawhi Leonard walk.
Right.
So Kawhi Leonard, I don't think, there's no way he's going anywhere. So we should stop that.
So,
I don't know for a fact, but I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to me that he would leave. And then the big question is Reggie Jackson. And, Reggie, you saw the emotional press conference last night. Obviously, the Clippers are in his heart. But the Clippers, because of the cap situation, can only offer him a contract starting at $10 million a year next year. And so he obviously played his way into a better contract than that. And when you heard him speak, even though he clearly would love to be back with the Clippers, he didn't say that. He said, I don't know what the future holds, but I'll always be a Clipper in my heart or something to that effect. So he understands, and I don't blame him. If he can secure the bag, then go secure the bag, Reggie Jackson. I don't blame him at all. So it'll be difficult for them to keep him. Then you got Boogie Cousins, Nick Batum. I imagine they can bring back Boogie and probably would. He played well for him in the playoffs. Batum's fairly important. You lose it, but there still can be a championship contender without Batum.
So, listen, I also think Kawhi is going to be back. I think you glossed a little bit over that he has a beef with the medical staff. Well, the beef with the medical staff is what ended his run in San Antonio, right? That's why he ended up demanding to be traded, was because he thought they mishandled his injuries. And so I am not as 100% or 99% confident as Broussard is, but let's just assume for the sake of the argument, Kawhi's back, because if he's not back, obviously the Clippers are not championship contenders. Right. They still have real issues. They've got $23 million locked into Beverly and Rondo. Y'all see Rondo in this series? I didn't, because he wasn't playing. Not there last night. DNP playoff Rondo was DNP playoff Rondo for the most critical moments. They traded for that contract. That's $9 million next year. Beverly is $14 million next year. If you think Patrick Beverly's a $14 million a year player, I got a 72 Chevelle I want to sell you for $185,000. It's insane. Also, that Luke Kennard contract kicking in. Serge Ibaka, I don't think he's going to opt out of his deal after what happened with him this year injury-wise, so he's going to be back. And Ivica Zubac is going to be back on a hefty salary, I think $13 million a year. So all those things make it tricky, and you mentioned it. Who was their third best player of these playoffs? Reggie Jackson. He was making the league minimum. I would be shocked if he's back. Who was probably one of their 6 most important players? Batum. He was making the league minimum. And they have no draft assets after this year's draft to trade. So, Brandon, I think the Clippers, what they have going for him is Kawhi is one of the 7 best players in basketball. Paul George probably is going to feel better going into next year than he did going into this year. And they might have the best coach in the whole league. But there's some uncertainty with the rest of the roster, and they don't have a lot of flexibility to upgrade it like other teams would.
Right. No, I mean, you're 100% correct, and we talked about this all year. They definitely have challenges when it comes to their cap situation and also the stock that they don't have in the draft. But every team, Nick, has their challenges when it comes to the roster and managing the cap. And that's what usually separates good organizations from great organizations. Like, who do you have in that spot? Because you have to be creative. You have to be collaborate with the owner, with the players, the agent. So, like, every team has that situation. I'm telling you right now, they next year they're still a contender. With everything you said, they're still going to be a contender. They'll make 1 or 2 tweaks and they'll be fine. But here's the deal, right? Because the question is, what does the future hold for the Clippers? And now we're talking about players. That's what we're talking about. Kawhi Leonard. You're talking about Reggie Jackson. You're talking about Paul George. Let's start with Kawhi Leonard. 2-time NBA champion, 2-time NBA Finals MVP, 5-time NBA All-Star Game MVP, 3-time All-NBA first team, 2-time All-NBA second team. And it goes on and on and on. Everything this man has accomplished, all of his accolades, there's nothing left for him to do. He is not LeBron James. He is not chasing MJ. He is home. You are where you need to be. Chris Brew is right. He said it. Look, that's one conversation with Ballmer. Go to Ballmer and you say, look, can we figure this out? Whether we need to fire somebody on this medical staff, if we're talking about negligence, or let's just have a conversation to make it better. I don't think they always have to go to firing somebody, but just talk, communicate. Everything that happened in San Antonio, he was young. And then that relationship with Pop, we don't know the ins and outs with that. The real question for me is Paul George. Who is he? He broke through this playoffs, 100%. He just can't go back. Ty Lue has to keep his foot on the pedal when it comes to Paul George. Paul George, stay aggressive. When Kawhi comes back and he's healthy, please don't fade back. We need 25 a night. We need you thinking like that. We need you to strap it down on defense. These 2 guys together with Paul George breaking through the way he did, they're a contender, Wilds.
I agree. I think they're a contender. And I also think no matter how well Paul George plays and no matter how well Kawhi plays, unless your name is LeBron James, 2 is not enough. You need 3 guys. Look at what the Bucks are looking at. The Bucks had Giannis and Chris Middleton. And you're like, you know what? 2's not enough. We need Drew. They went and got another big guy. Kevin Durant, for God's sakes, like, it's me and Kyrie. You know what they look back and say, you know what? 2's not enough. We need to go get Harden. Look at the Sixers. Sixers got 2, and then it went down to 1.5. Not enough. You need 3 guys. The Suns, Ayton is a number one. I know we always say, like, oh, it's Chris Paul and Booker. Ayton's the number 1 pick. They got 3 guys. The Warriors, when Klay comes back, will have 3 guys. I'm counting Draymond. So, look, no matter what they do, they're going to try to get another little piece. I don't think it matters. I think they can be contenders, but I don't think you can win the championship with just 2 great players, unless your name is LeBron James, Jenna.
It's a great take,
Hey, listen, when we started the show, it was me and Nick. And I said, not enough. Not enough. We need 2 more guys. 4 is what we need. Nick and I, it'll be a short show. It'll be like 8 minutes. We got to talk about Patrick Beverley ejected for shoving CP3. How dirty was this? First things first, on a Thursday. Show used to be... Saturday, Mookie Betts and the Dodgers take on Juan Soto of the Nationals. Or Red Sox take on the A's. All that action starts at 7 Eastern, only on Fox. Check local listings for the game in your area. Back here talking Clippers Suns. Rams stories to start your morning. Ram trucks built to serve. It's been one heck of a ride. Came back from down 0-2 to the Mavs. Then the Clippers came back from down 0-2 to the Jazz. Finally caught up to them when Phoenix got him last night. Paul George, who had to carry the team once Kawhi went down, was asked what could have been if the Claw didn't get hurt. Take a listen.
Oh, we would be going on. This series would have been a lot different. Talk about one of the best players in the league being out. Yet we were, inches, away from getting to the next round. So definitely, it's a what if on this. Factor matters. We didn't do enough. We didn't do enough to win, and it's the reason we're going home.
Nick, is Paul George right? The Clippers would have made the finals if Kawhi didn't get hurt?
I mean, maybe. They certainly, he's the best player on their team. He's one of the 7 best players in the league. But if this NBA season, these playoffs, I know we're going to focus on the injuries. But the other part we should focus on is in an era where we're like, the regular season doesn't matter. Or, these games, just focus on the fourth quarter. Everything matters. The Los Angeles Lakers... pick a regular season game that they blew. Pick one of them. Had they won that game, they wouldn't have been in the play-in. If they're not in the play-in, maybe Anthony Davis never hurts his groin. They're playing the fraudulent Nuggets, by the way, in that situation instead of the Suns. Who knows? Maybe they're still going. The Brooklyn Nets, 1 possession of defense better in Game 3. They stopped Drew Holiday's drive. Then the injuries don't matter. They're up 3-0 in that series. They're probably the favorites to win the title, and Brandon is wearing a Joe Harris jersey instead of setting one on fire in the House of Athlete fire pit outside in the palatial estate. Like, everything matters.
Don't tell anybody.
And the reason I mention that is, Brandon, the reason I mention it is, Kawhi had to exert so much energy, and by his standards, play so many minutes in round 1. 6 of those 7 games, he played 40-plus minutes. Game 6, Kawhi, we need you to score 45 and stop Luka. Good luck. And he did it. And I understand that when he got hurt in Game 4 against Utah, it's kind of fluke thing. He goes up, comes down weird on his knee. But for a guy who always has to manage his body, manage his workload, I think it really mattered that he had to play so many minutes and play so hard early. So they did that to themselves a bit, and that's not even to mention because they started all these series bad. They started all these series 0-2.
But because Paul George was just it was good, right? Like he was overcoming playoff P, and he was good, but he wasn't great. And when Kawhi went down, he started playing great. Now, he had a game here, a game there, 2 free throws, that was costly. But at the end of the day, he wasn't playing the way he'd been playing this series. So when you ask the question, if Kawhi was healthy, would they be going to the finals? Probably not, because he had to step up. Now, this could be good for them next year. But Kawhi needs to go to his boy, Paul George, and say, look, what you did when I left, I need you to do that next year. I need you to do that week in and week out. I need you to do that in the playoffs. We need that. That's why he had to play so much. So, look, if everything was equal, everybody was healthy, CP3 didn't get COVID wilds, it probably went to Game 7. And who knows? It's a toss-up at that point. So nobody knows. But at the end of the day, I do want to push back on Paul George a little bit with his comments. It's like, man, you didn't have to say that. What you said at the end, you should have said first. You should have said, look, they played well. Point blank, period. Hats off to them. Congratulations to CP3, 16 years, and he's finally getting it done. He's going to the finals. We will regroup and figure it out in the offseason. That's what he should have led with, Wilds.
Okay, I agree with you, but I'm not going to penalize him for being honest. I think it's okay to come up there and be like, yeah, we would have won, but he got hurt. And like, I'm having the same conversation that you're having at the bar. Kawhi is great. If I had him, I think it exudes confidence. But here's the problem, I think, with the Clippers. 2 guys and some change is not enough to get it done. And we just saw it happen in Milwaukee. You sit back and you're like, well, we've got Giannis and we've got Chris Middleton, and it's not enough. And they had to go make a big move to get Drew Holiday, and that is supposed to be the move that pushes them over. KD's like, oh, me and Kyrie, we're good money. Like, you know what? Not enough. We're going to go get James Harden. And right now, Nick, unless it's LeBron and AD, I don't think 2 guys is enough. And they don't have enough wiggle room to sort of make another massive move. So when we talk about the ceiling and how they can be optimistic to next year, I don't know if there's a reason to be a lot of optimism. You're very close to just being stuck in this middle ground, kind of like always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Like, we're not going to be able to get over the hump.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's why last year was such a missed opportunity, because these guys were healthy. And Jenna Wilds is right. Every team to win a title needs 3 guys. And you might be like, what about last year's champion? LeBron counts for 2. So LeBron's your best player and your third best player. AD's your second best player. They have 3 guys.
Okay.
So there it is. So you do need 3 guys. LeBron just counts for 2. That's how it works. No problem.
And we'll end the show with a little take your pick. Game 5, Bucks-Hawks tonight. Giannis's MRI came back clean, but he is doubtful for Game 5. Trae is questionable with that bone bruise. So, Brandon, whose return is more critical for the rest of the series, Trae or Giannis?
I got to go with Giannis. That's an easy 30-10. And somehow, some way we continue to knock the guy. I'm included in that conversation. So I got to go with Giannis.
Look, I think the subplot of whether or not Giannis plays again is fascinating on the heels of what the Warrior staff did with Durant. I still think that casts a long shadow over everything. Whether he's like, hey, I can kind of go, but it might be a long-term risk. So I'm confused by the whole situation, Nick.
I don't think the Hawks can duplicate what they did without Trae Young in Game 4 and Game 5. So I think for this game, it's Trae. I also think Brandon once played with a hyperextended knee and a bone bruise and went for 107 catches. So why don't they both play?